Hello everybody, this is Fungus and you're watching Fungus News, where we'll be talking everything Cobalion Division. On this week's segment, we will be talking about week 1 of the Cobalion Division. Now you might be thinking, this is similar to another news station on the same channel. However, it is much better because it is being presented by an actual winner of a winner of the season, which unfortunately the Keldeo Division cannot afford at the moment because they do not have any winners. Now, um, moving on from that, we will be talking about our first matchup of the week. Our first match is the London Vespa Queens, coached by Jake, versus the Russian Rapidashes, coached by Martin. Now, this matchup unfortunately ended up in disqualification as one of our players did bring an illegal Pokemon. The Russian Rapidashes did unfortunately bring a Deoxys attack, which they do not have. They only have normal Deoxys, which made the match end earlier than it really should have on turn 6. Because of this, there is not really much to talk about. That's all that really happened. Our second matchup of the week was the Carry Wisp versus coached by Dombozo versus the Trondheim Rosenspors, coached by Hydra. The Wisp brought a team of Colossal, Magirna, Dragapult, Sneasler, Uxie, and finally Sandy Shocks, while the Rosenspores brought a team of Ho-Oh, Spectrier, Hydrapple, Clefable, Excadrill, and finally Sneasel. Now this matchup, the Wisp took an early lead, being able to do massive damage to the Sneasel. However, after a little bit of a scare with the Hydrapple going for Nasty Plot, a mistake from an Hydra caused them to lose their Hydrapple. They used Terra Poison on the Uxie, who was already at +2 at special attack and special defense, and the Uxie used stored power, which made it so that the Hydrapple took super effective stored power damage, which killed it in one hit. The Trondheim Rosenspores weren't really able to recover from this. They were too far behind, and because of this, the Wisps were kind of just able to keep their momentum going and just kind of beat down the Rosenspores pretty easily from this point on. Even whenever the Rosenspores looked like they had some momentum going, it really was just the Wisp just beating down the Rosenspores pretty much the entire match. There really wasn't anything the in Hydra's team could do by this point. The match was pretty much over. So yeah, that's our second match of the week. Our third matchup of the week is the Virginia Vibravas versus coached by Jeremy versus the Santa Maria Absols coached by Felix. Now the Vibravas brought a team of Chen Pao, Primarina, uh, Iron Treads, Annihilate, Cresselia, and Raichu, while the Absols brought a team of Galarian Weezing, Iron Valiant, Necrozma Dawnwings, Garganacl, Tinglu, and Alomomola. Now, early on, the Alomomola was able to put in some nice work, being able to pick up a kill on the Primarina and a very, very scary Cresselia, who was up to 6 different combines. However, the fish was able to tank a hit and fire back with a huge, huge Mirror Coat, which was able to take out the Cresselia. The match then played out pretty normally. However, the Annihilate was actually trying to set up a few bulk ups against a Tinglu. However, Tinglu did have Whirlwind, which was able to get the Annihilate out of there and that threat gone. By that point in the game, the Vibravas needed anything, just needed something to try and get a lead on the Absols. That was their attempt, however, it was unsuccessful, and the Absols from there was able to win. The Annihilate, however, was trying its best, was able to pick up 2 kills against the Necrozma Dawnwings and also the Tinglu. However, it was just not enough as the Iron Valiant was able to come in and clean up the rest of the match. Now, our fourth matchup of the week was played between the Philadelphia Smeargles, coached by Fungus, versus the Michigan Manetrics, coached by Tog. The Smeargles brought a team of Fluttermane, Gliscor, Noivern, Cryogonal, Solgaleo, and Hydreigon, while the Manectrics brought a team of Heatran, Zekrom, Dusknoir, Araquanid, Shaman Sky, and Mew. Now the Michigan Manectrics were able to get off to an early lead, as the Araquanid was able to pick up a very nice kill on the Cryogonal. However, before that, the Cryogonal was actually able to rapid spin some Stealth Rocks away, which will be important for later on. Um, the match then was played pretty evenly. However, it was clear that the Michigan Manectrics were starting to take a pretty early lead. However, after the after the Mew went for a few calm mines, doing half of the health of the Solgaleo, the Smeargles um, switched in their Noivern into a oncoming Fire Blast. Then the Noivern was able to get a switcheroo off on a Heatran, which would lock it into its next move. The Michigan Manectrics here then made a mistake, going for Stealth Rocks, trying to get them back up as the Smeargles went into their Hydreigon. Hydreigon here, usually being a special attacker, actually set up a Dragon Dance, which boded very poorly for the Michigan Manectrics team, as nothing really wanted to take a +1 outrage. Shaman Sky was the switch in here. However, after a outrage, it was dead. The Heatran came in trying to take it out, but was taken out itself after going for a Steel Beam, getting rid of a lot of its health. Finally, the final victim of Hydreigon was the Dusk Noir, going down to a crunch. The Mew was going to be next. However, the Hydreigon, after doing so much work, was killed itself in its own confusion, and this led the Smeargles to go into their Flutter Mane, which was able to pick up the kill on Mew, unable to pick up the kill on the final Pokemon, which was the Zekrom. However, after Zekrom killed uh, after the Zekrom set up its own Dragon Dance and killed the Flutter Mane, Gliscor was able to come in and finish off the job, giving the Smeargles the win for this first week against the Michigan Manectrics. Our fifth matchup of the week is the Defenders of Stoliwrath, coached by Staniel, versus the All-Seeing, coached by Renolin. The Stalwarts brought a team of Moltres, Overquill, Giratina Origin, Zamazenta Crowned, Milotic, and Ogerpon Cornerstone, while the All-Seeing brought a team of Lugia, King's Gambit, Galarian Zapdos, um, Fortress, Kieran Black, and Mimikyu. Now, this matchup was very entertaining, mainly for the reason that both players made a lot of mistakes, a lot of costly mistakes that in a lot of other matchups would have cost them the match. However, in this matchup, as both players were making game-ending mistakes, it kind of evened out, and because of this, the match was very, like I said, very entertaining. Um, the star of the show here really was the Ogerpon Cornerstone, who was able to get a lot of damage off um, on the All-Seeing's Pokemons. And as the match progressed, the Ogerpon was able to just keep on using the Ivy Cudgel, just doing lots of damage with that stab rock move. The All-Seeing's team, with the Galarian Zapdos and the Kieran Black, were trying to get a sweep going with both of them. However, the Overquill was actually able to stop it. Was able to stop the Galarian Zapdos with two crunches. Funnily enough, the Galarian Zapdos actually used the wrong move, which potentially caused the Kieran Black to not be able to pick up sweep, as the Barb Barrage was able to pretty much just two-shot the Kieran Black as it was going for its Dragon Dance sweep. After this happened, it was pretty much over for the All-Seeing. There was no answers for the Ogerpon Cornerstone, which meant that the Stolly were actually able to pick up their first win of the season. Our final matchup is the Legendary Landorus, coached by Grandmaster Cake, versus the Ellesmere Eternals, coached by Kung Fu Panda. The Landorus brought a team of Mewtwo, Reshiram, Hisuian Avalugg, Fezandipiti, Dusclops, and a Scizor, while the Eternals brought a team of Zacian, Landorus, Metagross, Keldeo, Darkrai, and finally Cutiefly. Now, this matchup will be winning an award that I will be giving out each week called the Match of the Week. This award will be given to the match that I personally think is the most entertaining out of all of them. Um, Now, usually I will give out to this matchup to whichever matchup is the most competitive, has the most intrigue there. So, and I thought this matchup was very, very intriguing. It was super back and forth. At the beginning, there was an early scare with the Kelio going for a few calm mines. It looked like it was potentially going to do lots of damage, enough damage where the Landresses weren't going to be able to come back from. However, after a few misses and some very good plays by the Landresses team, they were actually able to neutralize the threat and kill it off later. Now, after this, it was still very back and forth, both teams being able to pick up some very key kills, mainly on the Mewtwo, the Zacian, and stuff like that. Um, and it came down to a 3 versus 2 situation. The Reshiram, the Hisuian Avalugg, and the Dusclops were left on the Landorus's team, while the Landorus and the Darkrai were on the Eternals team. Now, the Landorus was in on a Dusclops, but wasn't able to pick up the kill as it just Dusclops was just way too bulky with that Eviolite, and was able to pick up a kill with the Ice Beam, which left only a Darkrai versus the 3 members. However, Darkrai is a very strong special attacker, which meant that, and it also had Nasty Plotch, which meant that if it's set up to +6, it could potentially kill the team. And also, Dusclops is not exactly a very hard hitter. So if the Dusclops has no way of actually damaging this Darkrai, it has nothing it can do to get to +6. However, here the Eternals make a mistake, not able to decide to not just get up to +4 instead of +6, which surprisingly enough, the Reshiram is actually able to take a +4 Dark Pulse from a Darkrai, which was absolutely insane, but it was able to do so, which actually gave the win to the Landoruses, which I'm pretty sure are a newcomer this season. So that's a big win for them. The Eternals have been a constant playoff, have made the semifinals twice now, so that's a huge, huge win for the Landresses. Really, both players really showed though that they are to look out for this season because I mean this was an incredibly played match, even with the very few mistakes that they both made. It was still very, very incredibly well played, and I think both really should be proud. It was a very good display of Pokemon gameplay. Now our next segment is going to be the kill leaders of the week. Now first we have a 7-way tie between lots of different Pokemon. First the Keldeo, then the Annihilate, Tinglu from the Santa Maria Absols, the Colossal from the Carry Wisps, Excadrill from the Trondheim Rosenspores, Overquill from the Stalwarts, and then finally Fluttermane from the Philadelphia Miracles. I'm not going to go into depth of all the Pokemon, but they've all put in a lot of work on their first in this first week. I'm giving them their spots. Now in second place, we actually have a 4-way tie between Reshiram from the legendary Landorus, the Iron Valiant from the Santa Maria Absols, Alomomola also from the Santa Maria Absols, and also finally Ogre Pond Cornerstone from the Stalwarts. They all put in a lot of work and was able to not die this week, which was pretty impressive on their part since a lot of Pokemon died this week. And finally, in first place there's only one Pokemon in first place, is the Hydreigon from the Philadelphia Smeargles. Now I'm very happy that Hydreigon. It's a very good Pokemon, and was piloted by a very, very good team from a very good coach as well. But with 3 kills and 1 death, it was able to pretty much win the Smeargle's first match. Now next, I'm going to be doing another segment that's going to be done weekly, the Pokemon of the Week, and this award will be given to the Hydreigon from this week by the Hydreigon of the Philadelphia Smeargles. Now the Hydreigon really did turn the game around. It looked like the Manectrics were going to win against the former champions, the Smeargles, but however, a very sneaky set of the very sneaky Dragon Dance set was able to take out 3 of the Manectrix Pokemon, which really did, which completely shifted the the momentum of the battle. It looked and into the Philadelphia Smeargles' favor. And in the end, the Philadelphia Smeargles were able to win due to this Hydreigon. Um, and because of that, I think it is very fair to give the first week's Pokemon of the Week to Hydreigon. And the final segment for this week is going to be the free agents or the trades. This week, there was only one team that decided to make any trades, and it was actually the Santa Maria Absol. Surprisingly enough, because they did win their first week, but they did decide to trade off their Necrozma Dawnwings, the Goldengo, and the Wugtrio for a Lunala, a Porygon 2, and a Drifblim. I'm not really sure why they decided to make these trades. However, I guess they felt as though this team was better than the last one. Goldengo is usually a pretty good Pokemon. However, if you don't really have a lot of hazard setting, it's not the best. However, the Santa Maria Absols did have a lot of hazard setting, so it is a bit of confusing why they decided to do this. However, at the end of the day, if you don't like how a Pokemon plays, it doesn't matter how good it is, you're not going to be able to use it effectively. Maybe that's what the Santa Maria Absols felt with this team. They just felt as though this team was not as efficient, was not as geared to their own playstyle as they wanted to, so they decided to switch things up. Now, thank you for watching the first installment of Fungus News, and I hope you'll stay tuned for next week. Thank you for watching.